The sun was barely up, and yet the quiet house of Ryan Gallagher already hummed with a familiar emptiness that weighed heavier than any alarm clock could. Ryan had promised himself, after the heartbreak that had shattered his world 5 years ago, that he would never let anyone in again. Love, he had sworn, was a luxury he could no longer afford, not with Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, depending entirely on him. The promises he made to his heart were ironclad, no second chances, no new beginnings. Love had betrayed him once, it would not do so again. Emma, bright-eyed and mischievous, however, had other plans. That morning, she bounded into the kitchen with a grin that could melt glaciers and a sparkle in her eyes that spoke of mischief and hope. "Daddy, I want you to meet someone," she exclaimed, her small hands clutching the edges of a folded piece of paper. Ryan looked at her, wary yet intrigued. "Meet someone? At this hour?" he asked, trying to mask the unease in his voice. Emma's grin widened. "Yes, it's important." Before Ryan could protest, Emma had slipped past him and was already at the door, insisting he follow. He sighed, the familiar tug of fatigue and responsibility settling over him. Being a single parent was hard enough without mysterious guests thrown into the mix. But something about Emma's insistence softened his resolve. As they reached the front door, Ryan froze, standing there holding a bouquet of bright tulips as if he were unaware of how out of place he seemed, was a woman. She looked to be in her early 30s, with kind eyes that reflected warmth and patience, and an aura of calm that seemed to brush over Ryan's weary soul like a soothing breeze. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice musical yet understated. "I'm Nora Whitman, Emma's teacher." Ryan blinked. His mind was a whirlwind. Teachers came and went. What did this woman want at his doorstep so early? He swallowed, nodding cautiously. Hello, you're Emma's teacher?" Emma jumped in between them, holding Nora's hand as if this simple gesture could bridge worlds. "Daddy, she's amazing. She's nice, and she helped me with my reading, and she said maybe she could help you too." Ryan's brow furrowed, confusion and hesitation mingling with a flicker of curiosity he hadn't felt in years. He forced a polite smile and stepped aside to let them in. The tulips found their place in a vase on the kitchen counter, their colors brightening the muted tones of his apartment, and Ryan wondered why such a small thing could feel so startlingly beautiful. For the first few minutes the conversation was awkward. Ryan's polite questions were met with gentle, thoughtful answers. There was a careful rhythm in the way Nora spoke, a balance of empathy and professionalism, but her warmth was undeniable. Emma, meanwhile, had taken on the role of mischievous mediator, guiding the conversation with a level of confidence that embarrassed her father. "Daddy, she even likes the same kind of coffee you like," Emma teased, earning a reluctant chuckle from Ryan. Days turned into weeks. Nora's visits were never intrusive, always thoughtful. She volunteered for school events, stayed a little longer after parent-teacher meetings, and never failed to ask Ryan about his well-being. Not just Emma's. Ryan, who had once built walls so high that even the strongest winds of emotion couldn't topple them, found himself subtly shifting. He would catch himself looking forward to her messages, to her calls, to the light she brought into the house with each visit. Yet old fears die hard. Ryan's past was a heavy shadow. The memory of his failed marriage and the bitter emptiness it left was a constant reminder that opening his heart could lead to devastation. He caught himself at night staring at the ceiling, wondering if the warmth he felt when Nora laughed or brushed Emma's hair from her face was foolishness, a trap of hope he wasn't ready to set for himself. One rainy afternoon, Emma had returned home from school, drenched but radiant with excitement. "Daddy, you have to see this," she said, dragging him to her room. On her desk lay a crumpled note in her careful handwriting. "Dear Daddy," it began, "I think you and Miss Nora should go out for coffee. She makes you smile. I want you happy. Love, Emma." Ryan sat down heavily, reading the note over and over, his heart pounding. His daughter's faith in the goodness of people, in second chances, felt both heartwarming and terrifying. Could he trust that life could be gentle again? Could he risk letting someone in who might leave? It was that evening that Nora showed up at his door unexpectedly, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups of cocoa. "I thought Emma might be right," she said softly. "You deserve a little happiness too." Ryan's defenses wavered under her gaze, the gentleness in her tone, the unspoken understanding in her eyes. He invited her in, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to relax in someone's presence. Over cocoa and quiet conversation, Ryan discovered layers of Nora that went beyond the cheerful teacher his daughter adored. She had struggled in her own life, faced heartbreak, and yet carried herself with a resilience that mirrored his own. There was an unspoken kinship in their shared experiences, a comfort that neither had expected to find in someone new. But as Ryan's heart began to stir, doubts lingered. Was this really love? Or was it just a fleeting comfort, an illusion born of loneliness? The fear of getting hurt again whispered loudly in his ears. He excused himself to the balcony, staring at the rain-soaked streets below, and realized that Emma's small note had opened a door he thought was permanently sealed. The real challenge, he understood, was stepping through it himself. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. Nora's visits were never rushed. They shared small moments of joy that slowly wove into the fabric of Ryan's daily life. Laughter over spilled coffee, quiet walks with Emma through the park, evenings spent playing board games where everyone, for once, felt whole. Ryan realized that what he had feared was not love itself, but vulnerability. And vulnerability, as painful as it could be, was also the gateway to the most profound kind of happiness. One evening, after a long day at work, Ryan returned home to find Emma asleep on the couch, a book clutched to her chest. Nora was cleaning the kitchen quietly, humming softly. The sight struck him with such tenderness that he felt tears prick at his eyes. Life in this moment was imperfect yet beautiful. The thought of losing this again was unbearable. He understood finally that love did not require perfection, it required courage. Courage to open your heart, even when the past has scarred it. "Ryan," Nora said softly as if reading his thoughts, "I know this is sudden, but I care about both of you, deeply, and I hope you can feel that." His gaze met hers, and in the quiet intimacy of that moment, Ryan made a choice. He chose hope. He chose to let the possibility of happiness in. He chose to trust that love could exist again, even after the pain he had endured. Emma woke the next morning to the smell of pancakes and the sight of her father smiling in a way she hadn't seen in years. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging his hand, "I think you like Miss Nora, don't you?" Ryan knelt beside her, holding her hands, and nodded. "Yes, sweetie," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I do." Emma's face lit up with a radiant smile, her small arms hugging him tightly. "I knew it. You deserve happiness, Daddy." From that day forward, their little trio began building a life together, one moment at a time. Ryan learned to trust again, to laugh without restraint, to open his heart without fear. Nora became not just a friend or a teacher, but a partner in the truest sense, someone who could share the burdens and joys of life. And through it all, Emma remained the shining light who had dared to believe in love when her father had almost forgotten how. Sometimes Ryan would catch himself staring at Nora across the kitchen table or in the glow of the evening, and his heart would swell with gratitude. Life had offered him a second chance, a chance he almost denied, and every time he saw Emma's beaming face, he was reminded of the small acts of courage, like a daughter's faith, a teacher's kindness, a man's decision to hope, that could change everything. Ryan had sworn never to love again, yet here he was, fully immersed in the warmth and laughter he had once thought impossible, and in that he discovered a truth that was both simple and profound. Love, when approached with honesty and care, has a way of finding even the most cautious hearts. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness, second chances, and love are worth believing in, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support helps us share more tales that inspire hope and warmth in the world. Before the story ends, let's take a moment to honor the courage it takes to love again, to trust, and to believe that life can surprise us in the most beautiful ways. Sometimes, the smallest acts, like a child's note, a teacher's visit, or a simple cup of cocoa, can change everything. Ryan, Nora, and Emma continued their lives together, weaving memories of laughter, tears, and unconditional love. And as Ryan watched Nora and Emma laughing in the golden evening light, he knew that the past no longer had the power to define his future. Love had returned, gentle and transformative, and he was ready to embrace it fully with a heart wide open.